Welcome back, Mailmeisters. This is Midnight Mailman. We're going to be looking at some Latios counters. Latios is coming on April 15th, going to be leaving April 22nd, if I remember correctly. So we'll be looking at the Latios counters under the conditions that you have a best friend in the lobby, and we're assuming that you don't get weather boosted when you're fighting it, and it doesn't get weather boost when it's fighting you. The results are a little bit different if one of those is the case, but overall it's very similar to this. So this is only looking at level 40 attackers. Just to keep in mind that these are your fully maxed out Pokemon. The reason that we look at the counters in these raid simulations is the recommended counters that Niantic recommends for us, or the Pokemon Go app recommends, is not good. So one of the most common Pokemon that Niantic likes to recommend is Aggron. Aggron has less than half the damage per second of Rayquaza, just to give a good comparison. Rayquaza is just a monster. It does really, really well. So if we look, this is just to beat down the boss as fast as possible so that you can go ahead and look and see if you got it yourself a shiny or not. Rayquaza, big bad boss, gonna be taking that guy down really fast. Hopefully you got quite a few good ones that you were able to power up from the Rayquaza weekend a couple weeks back. If not, this weekend you have a chance to get yourself a Dragontail Outrage Salamence, which, as it posted, is the second best in damage per second against the big bad Latios. Dialga is also really good. Palkia is also really good. And the list just goes on. Giratina Origin, Dragonite. And I'm just going to stop at Mamoswine because the time to win starts dropping off pretty sharp. If you're wondering why it's showing these 600 seconds, 500 seconds, it's if only one person was fighting, as evident. You don't have 600 seconds to fight the raid boss. If you did, you could take down the Latios by yourself, potentially. But this is just to show that if you are doing it with 2 people, you just divide that time to win by 2. And if you are doing it with 3 people, you divide that time to win by 3. And that's how fast you're going to be beating the boss down. So that's just in general cases. If you're like me and you want crazier cases, I like to do what's called Wafu raiding. And Wafu raiding is a type of raiding that you leave the gym as soon as you start fighting. Because of that trick, you are not allowed to re-lobby. Thus, you can only use the first 6 Pokemon. That's all you have to beat the boss for everyone. So I like to look at total damage output to see what the biggest, baddest guys are that can stay in the fight for a really long time. And thus I don't have to feign out. We beat the boss, we're able to catch it, and then do the next raid very, very quickly. So when we do the total damage output, I always like to organize by moveset because as you'll notice, the best total damage output Pokemon changes from moveset to moveset. So I like just to look at the charge moves, and I like looking at the harder 3. The top is the harder 3, the bottom are the easier ones. So Zen Headbutt Dragon Claw is harder than Dragon Breath Dragon Claw. But this is mostly because this top counter Togekiss is fairy, and it takes a resistance tier or immunity tier resistance to dragon type attacks because of its fairy typing. So the Dragon Claw does almost nothing. If you've noticed when you've had a Gardevoir or Togekiss in a fight and it uses a dragon type charged move, it does almost nothing to your Togekiss or Gardevoir. So Togekiss, Gardevoir, Dialga, and then Tyranitar. After that, it kind of gets a bit sketch. You got Granbull, you got Ninetales, but you also want to look at the time to win for these. It's ideal to have under 900 seconds because then you can do it with 3 people. So for example, Meteor Mash Metagross has over 900 seconds. The reason I say 900 seconds is that is the trio mark. So if it's more than 900 seconds, it's going to take a really long time to beat down the boss. So if we were only using Metagross, it would take quite a while, but we probably wouldn't faint, so that's good. The other move we'd like to look at is Psychic. So Psychic, our boy Tyranitar, it takes almost no damage because again it has an immunity tier resistance to Psychic. So it can just chomp away with that Bite and Crunch and take down the boss. And then the other moveset is Solar Beam. Solar Beam, Dialga takes the #1 spot, but you also notice that Rayquaza is doing really hot as well. So I'm generally going to use Rayquaza and then Dialga because that Rayquaza still has that under 18 death mark. It can survive just with 3 people. So my team will consist of Rayquazas and Dialga. You'll also notice that Dragonite has barely more total damage output than Rayquaza. So they will perform very similar in practice. If we swap over to Pokemon Go, you'll see how I have translated this to moveset, or in the game, how I set up my teams. So for the Dragon Claw version, I will lead with Dialga, even though it is the less bulky option. The reason I'm leading with it is it has a higher damage per second, higher time to win. So we'll get off a bunch of quick damage, and then I will just cushion with these bulkier Pokemon like the Gardevoir, like the Togekiss, so that we will stay in the fight long enough to take down the boss. For the Psychic moveset, I have full Bite Crunch Tyranitars. I might be switching that later and doing like a Rayquaza in front and then 5 Bite Crunch Tyranitars, or maybe 2 Rayquazas and 4 Bite Crunch Tyranitars. I haven't fully decided. That will be a decision for a later date. Solar Beam, as you can tell, I only have 1 Dialga, so I decided to do 5 Rayquazas and then end it with a Dialga. And then just pure damage per second, just 6 Rayquazas, and call it good. So that is in general the video. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.